means truth. So tell me about your spiritual journey.
Welcome to Tattva Tuesday. This is Lindsay Warwick, the conduit on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. I am so excited for this week's guest. I have Kristen Muñoz of Moon Girl Glass, among other amazing things. So happy to have you here to tell your story. Kristen and I, we connected through Anita.
Yeah.
Yes. And I recently made a trip out to Asheville area, and I had the pleasure of going to Kristen's studio to watch her and her partner blow glass. And they actually made this beautiful glass that I'm drinking water out of right now. Super high vibrational, powerful art that she creates. And she also has a lot of stories to tell. So what an amazing honor and privilege it is to have you on the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I think you had a podcast with Anita in the past that I really enjoyed. So I'm really happy to be here.
So happy to have you. So as you know, the Tattva Tuesday, Tattva is the Sanskrit word that means truth. So I always start with, tell me about your spiritual journey. You know, a light question.
Yeah. I guess it started when I was really young, when I was having seizures that were unexplainable. And I left this plane and was able to be in this experience of perfect unconditional love and bliss and light. And it, from a young age, made me realize that there was so much more than this life, and that it was so incredibly beautiful and peaceful that I had a hard time being here in this plane, in this existence. I didn't really understand the way that Western culture lives. And I didn't realize what my soul was yearning for and craving was indigenous ways of living. And when I say indigenous, I kind of mean all peoples of the world are indigenous cultures where we were living more in tribes and everyone relied on each other for all of our needs, as opposed to growing up in America where it's a very different energy. And so a lot of children and parents suffer from not having the experience of being surrounded by the elders and the people of the tribe who aren't out gathering food and foraging and hunting and that kind of thing. Like in our culture, our parents stay at work all day long, and the children go to these different institutions wherever they can find them in most cases. And there's a big disconnect of the family right there. And also it's a big disconnect within the community as well. And I feel like that I felt that at a really young age and didn't understand why our parents had to work all the time and not be with us. So I started getting into yoga at a really young age, and that helped me process a lot of these energies that my body was experiencing. and I got put on antidepressants and pharmaceutical medications and anti-seizure medications while I was growing up. And I felt like these medicines were really bad for my body. And I stopped taking them and had to kind of find my own path with my own healing. And I feel like when these kinds of situations are happening with our young children, with seizures or seeing spirits, they call it like schizophrenia and these kinds of things, I feel like we need indigenous wisdom to understand them and navigate through them and heal them, because they're actually gifts, and if they're used in the correct way, are here to guide humanity. And along with that comes a really strong connection with Mother Nature and having a strong connection with her. As a lot of Western people, I was raised as a Catholic, and I never really resonated with the creation story of Eve getting kicked out of the garden. And I resonate so much more with the indigenous stories of Eve falling from a star from the sky with a bunch of plants and seeds in her arms, and a turtle rising up from the surface of the water to catch her. And upon realizing the beauty that she was known as Star Woman, gathered all the animals together to figure out a way to help her. And so one by one, they tried to go down into the deep as far as they could to bring back some mud to create some earth for Star Woman. And they figured it out, and they did. So we live on this land that's known as Turtle Island. And all of the animals are here to help us. And I feel like part of the wisdom that comes with our ancient ancestors is that strong connection with the Earth Mother. And she gives so unconditionally and so fully all of our needs. And in this Catholic kind of culture, the vision of our connection with nature is that we are above nature. It is outside of us. And it is also kind of like this war that was created against nature when Eve got kicked out of the garden. So I think a lot about how we can heal ourselves, because this story that comes from this Catholic religion, and a lot of them, is one of fear and shame and guilt. So these are all really low vibrational feelings and emotions. And it's so ingrained in us from such a young age to have this feeling of worthlessness and not belonging. And the word they use is sinners. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to think of this beautiful experience that we're sharing with one another as one of love and one of connection and one of becoming one with the Earth Mother back into that hoop. It's not a pyramid with us at the top. It's a sacred hoop, and it's a cycle. And just like Mother Nature goes through her cycles, spring, summer, winter, and fall, we too go through our cycles. And it's known as a medicine wheel, the wheel of life, yeah?
Mhm.
So we're all on this wheel together. And I feel like the more we can experience self-love, the more we can experience the oneness that we are with all of this creation, the more that we will start to heal from these past traumas, and the more that Pachamama, our Mother Earth herself, will heal, because we are one and the same. So it's an alchemy that's going on. And it's really challenging when this idea is created that heaven is separate from earth, yeah, that we're not part of this garden, yeah. But in reality, we can create heaven on earth right here. It's actually one and the same. It's a vibration. And so I'm trying to bring the two worlds together.
Yes.
Back into the union of the sacred marriage of the physical and the spiritual. And I've gone through a lot of really intense situations to be here today.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing part of your journey. Um, I can relate to some of it as far as experiencing a lot of energy at one time and being diagnosed bipolar or, you know, all kinds of things. And taking myself off of medication, which I'm not advocating any which way of someone else to live their life or make a choice, but this is what I did. And I turned towards God, source. So I think it's fascinating that you had that similar experience. Last night, I actually was creating some art with a friend, and we spoke a little bit about the autistic spectrum and how her belief system is that they currently are already living in the 4D reality, that they are gifted. And this is kind of resonant with what you just said about gifted people or people that have special things going on, that they're actually gifts to assist us with our communion with earth and animals. And I really do feel very deeply connected to animal medicine. As I've communicated to you, we've started forming this sisterhood, soul recognition. When I met you, you're just such a beautiful soul and a wonderful artist. And I just very much appreciate you sharing some of the stories you've already shared with me personally, and also that creation story was so beautiful. And you just emanate, you emanate the union. And interestingly enough, the piece that I was channeling last night, the art piece, I can't wait till it comes to fruition, was based off of the caduceus, which is on the bottom of my glass. And this has been a symbol that's been coming to me, since I've gone back to school to go into the medical field, and also this inner union that's been happening with me. So can't wait to share more about that art project, but I love the alignment so far about what you've shared. I would love to hear about some of those. I know that there is one major story that you would like to share on here, and I would love for you to kind of get into that one. And also I want to know how you got into blowing glass.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so I love it. Thank you so much. Before I go into that one, I want to talk a little bit about the symbol that is on the bottom of your cup.
I'm
The
still
hermetic
drinking
symbol.
water, but I will, once I'm finished drinking my water, which I will say, every morning and every night, I have a glass in my sacred glass that Kristen asked me to pray over and bless. So it is incredibly dear to me. And it has the caduceus on the bottom. And I talk to my water in the morning and at night when I drink from it to heal my mind, body, and spirit, or whatever beautiful healing intention I have. So I wanted to share that that's been my ongoing practice since I received this class from you.
That is so awesome. So this symbol, I had seen it a lot before just in life, but I never really pondered upon it or gave it much thought until I was in a ceremony and I started seeing the symbol in the fire. And it was so evident. It was like a message. So I was asking the fire, what does the symbol mean? And the fire said it's the kundalini of the divine feminine and the divine masculine in perfect balance, the snakes in one vessel, the staff for healing and enlightenment, the wings at the top. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I wanted to honor that vision I caught with the fire. So I had another artist create a brass stamp of that symbol for me that I've been putting on the bottoms of glasses. And it was really interesting that I always recognize that symbol as like for doctors and nurses in our country. And then I started seeing that ambulances come down the road and there was only one snake in the staff. And my first thought was, it's poison. And I don't know, I looked more into what does that symbol mean? And it's more for like commerce, like money. So I don't know, it's something to think about. But I make everything from ornaments, hummingbird feeders, and pendants and jewelry to lighting, like chandeliers and pendant lights and wall sconces. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the lighting. And ever since I started working with glass over 20 years ago, and ever since I started working with glass, I wanted to create lighting that looked like morning glory flowers with the heart-shaped leaves and vines. And I was taking blacksmithing classes at the time too. So I wanted to do all the work and create the whole piece. But in order to legally sell a piece of lighting, it has to be UL listed. And in order to get a piece UL listed, it has to be, or it costs like $2,000 like per piece,
Wow.
which is not in my price range. So that dream was put on the back burner for a long time. And through my life, one of the most important medicines that was calling me ever since I was a teenager was a medicine that is known as peyote to the US government. But to our Native American church, it is known as Pajuta Wakan. And I have been working with this medicine for many years. And I was harvesting this medicine and bringing it back to my house and preparing it for Sundance when I got busted. And they incarcerated me for a few weeks until I could get out and get a court date and everything going. But during this process, DSS took my kids and they saw this peyote as a drug. And so I was looking at 10 years incarceration with these charges that they had on me. And I showed up to my first custody case without an attorney because I didn't have any money and I didn't have any hope either. So I was kind of in this space of just following the rules, but not knowing how or what I was going to do. And when I was in that courtroom, the judge looked at me in my eyes and called me by my name and said, "Miss Munoz, I know that you're a good mother, and you need to leave this courtroom right now and get yourself a good attorney, and you need to come back and see me." And later that day, my attorney, who had helped me on a previous custody case, called me and asked me why I hadn't called her. And I told her, because I don't have any money and I don't think there's any way that I'm going to be able to get through this. And she knew of my glass art and she loves my work. And she was in the process of building a house. And so she told me that she had all the confidence in the world for me to do all the lighting in her home.
Wow.
And that she was going to be with me through this whole process. And she said, "I love you and your children need you right now. And you need to pick yourself up and we need to do this."
Wow.
And so I didn't know how to make the lighting and blowing glass by yourself, because when this happened, I lost my whole spiritual community. I lost my friends. All of my family lives hundreds and hundreds of miles away. So I was completely alone. My wolf dog was gone. She took off while I was in jail and I couldn't find her. Like, I literally lost everything in a blink of an eye that meant anything to me.
Mm.
And so when I showed up to that courtroom, that first one, like, I didn't know how to live or do anything. I was so broken. And like my attorney said, you have to pick yourself up. And I had to figure out how to make these light fixtures by myself. Glass blowing is usually done as a team. And I didn't know what I was doing either. And so, and I had no money. So I had to but luckily I had all the tools and like the studio and everything already built, because I built it about 16 years ago. So I got a landscaping job and bought materials, the glass, the quartz, the crystal to melt down. So I melt it down at 2120 degrees Fahrenheit in this crucible. And then I take these long metal pipes and I gather glass on the end of them and I add color and
amazing
swirl
process.
it around. And it's such a spiritual practice because we're working with all of the elements, the fire, the earth, the wind with my breath, and the water to create each piece. And so I just called on all my spirit guides and helpers and Pachamama herself to work through me and help me create these pieces. And I figured out how to make the chandeliers and the wall sconces and the pendant lights, and we won. We won the court cases. I beat DSS, I beat my kids' fathers, and I beat a grandmother. They were all fighting against me. And I felt like I had to bring the light through the dark night of my soul with Moon Girl glass, which is what I call my artwork. And now I'm making much bigger chandeliers and lots of pendant lights. And people are loving all of the color. And one of the reasons I wanted to start working with lighting is because glass and light and color look so amazing together. But there's not a lot of options for colored glass lighting. A lot of it is clear or white, like frosted white or like painted brown. And all of the crystal that I use is there's no paint involved at all. So there's a bunch of different metals and minerals that are used to create the colors that appear in the glass. And some of them can be really vibrant and bright, like this red and yellow. And so we have a lot of fun with light and color, and I'm teaching classes now. So we have a beginner's class offering, and people get to make either a drinking glass, an ornament, or a paperweight in that class. And then we have a more exotic hot glass date night class that's called Blow Me. And we bust out all the sensual terminologies and glass blowing and turn it into a comedy skit. And in that class, the couples are working as a team to co-create their pieces together to build confidence while spicing up their love life. And a vision for a new class just came this morning, actually. I was sharing it with Ben. Yeah, it gave me goosebumps to talk to him about this, but I want to create a class that's not just glass blowing, but it's also yoga and meditation and a little bit of metaphysical properties in there too for our youth. So it's designed to be for like a coming of age type ceremony that's going to involve all these different healing modalities in it, and also glass blowing to create spiritual tools for our youth to have to empower them and help them on their journeys in this earth school that we're all experiencing together. So that class hasn't fully come into vision yet, but it's in the works, and I'm feeling really good about it.
I feel really good about that. And wow, thank you for sharing your story. It's amazing and scary and bizarre as well. What I saw as you were explaining it is that it's like your gift of your art is really what kind of saved you and got you through that whole situation that basically financed your lawyer to help you, which is just so amazing how when we are in the darkest nights of our souls, the darkest times of our lives, I have found in my own life, as well as the other individuals that I've had on this podcast, when they're telling their story, their spiritual stories, that it is in the darkest of times that they discover the brightest light. And yours literally a lighting fixture. And I love that so much. It's so powerful. And I love the way that you shared it with such dignity and grace. You're such a beautiful person. I have had the honor of being in your physical presence, and you are just such a bright light. I want to ask you, what do you think? What do you think was the most profound medicine of that experience? And I'm also wondering how long the court proceedings were. Now, we don't really have to go into all the details that you don't want to, but if there are some stories or what visions, besides, you basically taught yourself how to create all these lighting fixtures. I'm just curious. I'm curious. I'm sure the listeners or viewers are curious as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, because like I said, I was alone, but I could not have done this alone.
Right.
And so the first thing that started happening was, of course, when I got out of jail, I couldn't get out of bed. I had no reason to live anymore. Seriously, like that's where I was. I don't know how long it took. I don't know how many days went by that I wasn't eating, but I want to share with people that we are nature, because what started happening was the birds started knocking on my windows. And I would get so angry because I just wanted to sleep and die and not be here. And they kept knocking. It was the weirdest thing. And at first, I would kind of jump out of bed to try to see what it was. And they were red birds, which was pretty mind blowing because in the Cherokee tradition, they have their own kind of like zodiac with the animals. And I'm the red bird in that tradition. So that was a little glimmer of hope, but wasn't enough to keep me from going right back into bed and wanting to die, you know? And I remember so clearly it was my son's 5th birthday and he wasn't with me and I couldn't talk to him and I didn't know where he was. And all I could do was cry and wish him love from my bed that I was trying to die in.
Yep.
And all of a sudden this wren flew through my balcony sliding glass door and landed right on my fan. And I could hear its little feet on the fan. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then it flew around my bed 3 times in a circle. And then it flew downstairs and took off. And I jumped out of bed because I was like, oh my God, I have to get the bird out of the house or it's going to die in here. And I helped the bird get out. And I think that was the inspiration that I needed. And the redbirds continued to knock on my windows for the 3 years that this process took. And neighbor dogs, since my dog was gone, right? And I was so alone. These neighbor dogs came and they lived with me. They kind of just like slept in my studio. And so I went and bought them dog food and started feeding them. And they helped me remember to eat and take care of myself. And when I finally got to a place where I could start seeing my child was all the way in Chapel Hill. One was here, so I could see that one once a week for 1 hour at a time. It was brutal.
Yeah.
And it had to be supervised. And then the other one was in Chapel Hill. So I had to drive and I could only see that one for 1 day, 4 hours supervised per month. And so on this drive, I kept finding hawks on the side of the road. Hawk became my spirit animal.
Yeah.
I found 9 of them and I brought them home and I would pray with them and I would take their feathers apart, whatever was salvageable. And then I prayed over them and asked them to help me create a way for us to honor their body and their spirit through these feathers. And I buried them all over the land for protection here. And during this process, I had a vision quest. It's called a humblecha, where I spent 4 days and 4 nights without food and water to pray. And while I was in this humblecha, I created these 9 prayer fans with all of the hawk feathers.
Wow.
Not really knowing what they were for other than they were gifts. That's what I knew. And I had no idea what who was going to be outside of my vision quest. But when I stepped out of that ceremony, there were 9 women. And those 9 women got each one of those prayer fans. And so another thing that had happened was the first hawk that came, I was driving down the road with a friend of mine. And all of a sudden I got the urge to grab some tobacco and pray for the Hawk Nation and put the tobacco out the window. And so I did that. And my friend was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm praying for the hawk that's coming." About 30-ish minutes later, I see the hawk on the side of the road. And I said, "Pull over, there it is." And we pulled over, and it was this huge red-tailed hawk that had just gotten hit. And it was still warm. And I started crying as I was holding this beautiful being to my chest. And I took it home and I prayed, "Help my children, keep them safe, help us." And I stretched the wings out because the bird was in perfect condition.
Wow.
I took the wings and I stretched them and dried them and salted them. And I took the tail feathers and I cleaned them, and the skull. I don't know what they're called, but they're these Indian boxes that they use for praying, and they have two doors, and you open them, and usually they have a bell. It's like an antique from India, and so I used this vessel to put the hawk skull, and the talons I wrapped in crystals to wire wrap them so they would dry. And the grandmother who had my youngest child chopped off all of his dreadlocks. He had the most beautiful locks. His hair had never been touched.
Wow.
Okay. And she mailed them to me. So I put them inside of this box that had the hawk surrounding him, his hair, his energy. And I had hair from my other child from a previous haircut. And so I put their hair in there too. And this hawk was protecting us. And the last court case that I went to, when I won my kid back that was in Chapel Hill, I was driving down the road, down the highway with my mom in the car, and I was driving. So she was sitting in the passenger seat. And all of a sudden, this red-shouldered hawk was flying right at our eye level with our car for such a long time that we were watching this together, me and my mom was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before. And I said, "Mom, it's going to go so good today.
I
The
just got
hawks are,
chills.
the medicine is with us. The medicine is with us." And I knew it before the outcome was going to take place, that we were divinely protected. And I know we're running out of time, but I want to share one more quick story
Oh, we have like
that took place.
we have like 15 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
This
that
one
was
is
an
so
amazing story.
Okay, then I can go back
can
to
you
this one.
share what tribe you're from? Are you?
Oh, the
Yeah.
tribe?
Yeah.
Oh, so I was not born in indigenous ways. My ancestors were colonized.
Okay.
So that's a whole story in itself, because ever since I was a teenager, I picked up Carlos Castaneda's writings at a really young age. And I reread them so many times in my life because they are such a healing medicine for me. But in those teen years, when I knew that peyote existed, I knew that was my medicine. I didn't know how I knew. It's just something that we know, right? And I spent so many years of my life looking for this medicine, and I didn't find it until later on in life, right after I had children, which was perfect timing because they got to experience ceremony in this beautiful way of life that my soul had been craving for from birth, since as long as I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through the Lakota people that I discovered this medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been my teachers for many years. And as I kept growing on this path, I discovered that my ancestors, the Huichol people, are the ones who brought the medicine to the Lakota people.
Oh,
So it came back around full circle like that for me.
That's so interesting. And
I'm like so many of us, separated from our ancestral roots in that way. So we kind of make our own path, right? We're fragmented. Like that's why I love beautiful things or broken things, you know,
Yeah.
broken and beautiful, because it's the same.
Yeah, like the Japanese kintsugi art that takes the broken vessels, puts it back together using gold. And it is just such a beautiful metaphor for us as human beings going through these experiences that do break us. But once we can alchemize those experiences. So we do have that beautiful free will from God. We can alchemize the experience and turn it into art, or some fall backwards and go into darkness. So I love that you just said that.
I wanted to, oh, real quick, I have to plug my battery in so I don't. But yeah, so this brings me to my next story of the healing guides that were coming through during this process. So
Yeah.
as I was starting to come out of my shell and eat food again and seek any connection I could find, because I lost so many friends, and
Why did you lose friends? People didn't
because
believe you?
it was the fear. Like when you're looking at that kind of felony charges and you've lost your kids, and we live in a super small town, I was kind of outcasted. It's a fear-based mentality of not understanding a medicine and calling it a drug. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I kept hearing from people that I was connecting with, new people, that I needed Ganesha in my life. Well, I had no idea what Ganesha was. I was like, what is that? And they were like, oh, it's the elephant god, you know. And I was like, no, I don't. But I pay attention to these things, right? So
Yeah.
after the third one, I was like, okay, I got to figure out this Ganesha thing, right? This was a year after the situation took place initially. So it was an entire year before I was able to get my two children back together with me. So they were not able to see each other for an entire year.
Wow.
And the first time that we were able to get back together, we went on a hike, and there was this river there. And we were walking along the river, and we were seeing this red flash in the water. And all of us saw it, and we were like, what is that? Let's get it, right? And so this is one of them now, Seneca. So it was kind of like a steep incline. So we had to help each other while one person was able to get a stick to try to pull this out of the river. And we were kind of pulling each other back up the hill while we were able to get the red thing out of the river. It was Ganesha.
No way.
And do you
It
see
was in the
how
river?
do you see how he's missing 3 hands?
Yeah.
He was telling us he's got us. He sacrificed himself for us. So we started feeding him every time we were together, and we would have a meal. He would sit with us at the table, and we would feed him and offer him treats. And he sits on my altar all the time now.
Well, he's the remover
So
of
after these,
obstacles.
exactly, he came in full force.
That is
To help us.
amazing. You found that in the river?
Yep. After I was like, what is this Ganesha? I need Ganesha in my life. So all of these experiences with the animals and with the spiritual beings that come through for us have made me realize that it's all us. There's no reason to have any judgment against any kind of culture or belief. Like, oh, I'm this race, so I can't pray for this race, or do you know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
that's appropriation, or I mean, I get it to an extent. Like, we don't want to be rude or disrespectful to one another. But this was just evidence for me that these beings, I don't have, that I know of, any Indian blood in me, but Ganesha is my savior. He's one of them. And I'm okay with that. I have many. And so I have this belief that, there's maybe 3 million gods. I don't know. Just pick one and act like it. Do you know what I mean? Let's not judge one another. Let's not keep perpetuating hate through fear of not understanding what is medicine and what is sacred and what is holy and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we to say? Maybe it's all sacred. Maybe we are all this.
Mm-hmm.
And we create the help that we need when we need it. If we choose to live, if we choose to do the work, if we choose to show up and connect and love and heart opening energy. Because we could create heaven on earth
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
We could bring Christ here right now through our own hearts.
Christ, I feel like absolutely. I feel yes, 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 and yes to everything you're saying. And it's like so divinely aligned, because at the end of every podcast, I ask my guests if there's anything else that they would like to share. And you already are on that wavelength and have shared so much. And that is the reason why I created this podcast. I got the download, I guess, 3 years ago now, after I went through an abusive situation. I felt like my throat chakra needed opening, and I needed to get my voice out there. And I have always been fascinated with God, whatever that looks like to you, as long as you are being a good human being, just like you said, pick one. I don't care. But what fascinates me is this human experience of finding that higher power, which to me, I feel like resides within. It's with that. It's everything. I feel my personal philosophy is God is everything. And I'm not Native American, but I feel deep I don't know if I have any Native American in me. I'll say that I've never done the DNA test, but I am deeply resonant with Lakota medicine and sweat lodge and honoring earth in that way. I also resonate with some of the Indian theology and some aspects of Christianity. I love Jesus. I love Jesus. I love that Christ consciousness energy. And so that is why I created this podcast, is so that people could come on here and just share about their experience. And what is so profoundly beautiful is that we have all gone through some crazy suffering, and to find that inner light and then allow that alchemical process to transpire to turn us into the beings that we eventually become is exactly why I created this podcast. So I just love that you said that at the end.
And I love the name, by the way.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Thank you. So a couple of years ago, I was trying to think about a business name for myself as I did these different certifications, yoga and energy healing and card reading and such. And I have gotten a lot of messages from spirit about humility, that I am just this vessel, but it is the God consciousness, the Christ consciousness that flows through. And so I'm like, I didn't want to call myself the channel, the conduit came to me, and it just hit, when you have those creative downloads, and it just like, oh, that feels good, And I Googled, like, if anyone else called themselves the conduit. This was a couple of years ago, and it just felt right. It's that the allower for the energy to flow through. Just
Yeah.
because that's what I consider myself when I do any type of healing work with anyone. I'm just holding the space, holding the frequency, holding the essence of safety for whomever I'm working with. But it's ultimately, it's their free will and their desire, right? They can create healing. They can create heaven on earth. I'll never forget, I was in Costa Rica when I was living in Costa Rica when I channeled, sit in deep meditation and you're feeling the stream of consciousness flowing through. And I realized that I could create heaven on earth. And it's here now. We can also create hell on earth as well. It just depends on what we're focusing on. And it's just been such an amazing thing. And I'm just so, so glad that you said that and recognized that. And I'm just so honored to have met you and continue to develop a sisterhood with you. And I'm just so grateful that you came on the podcast to tell your story. You have such cool stories, and maybe we need a part 2. You know?
Yeah, I would love to. It's hard to think about which ones to share and what ones to come through. So I hope that there was something that I have said that could be a healing medicine for someone. I've been in hermit mode and really protecting my heart ever since this went down. I'm coming out now. It's been about 8 years. And so I want to use the same story that I don't know if exiled is the right word, or that like put me in hermit mode,
To free you.
to build community again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that because of past mistakes or past misunderstandings that we should live alone and not be part of community anymore, So I hope that there's something in my words that can bring a deeper understanding of compassion and love and acceptance to anyone who's listened this far.
Yeah. And I love that so much. It's like, yeah, that story that broke you and put you into exile or hermit mode is the same story that is going to give you freedom. And that is a beautiful thing. And I feel that if we can really face and go into the shadow and own it, and then it's alchemy. I wrote an article a couple of years ago called Pain is the Alchemy of the Human Spirit. It really, really is. It's a very transformative thing if we use our free will to change for the better, move towards the light. So thank you so much for sharing everything and just for being in my life. And I definitely would love to have a part 2 with you. The story about your partnership is a really amazing, beautiful story. So we definitely are going to have to talk about that next time on the podcast. But if people want to reach out to you to get some beautiful art from you, or if they would like to connect with you, how could they do that?
My website is moongirlglass.com, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, moongirlglass. And I would love to connect with anyone who wants to come and experience glass blowing or connect with me in any way. So I'm here. Reach out.
Hey, well, thank you so much again for being here. And thank you to the listeners or the viewers, however people are consuming this podcast. Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
And
I can't wait to see you again.
I know, I can't wait to see you too. So
maybe that next sweat lodge.
Yes. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time with Tattva.